On the buzz meter this Sunday, the media are ablaze over Donald Trump Jr. as the New York Times reports and the president's son confirms that he met with a Russian lawyer who he was told had opposition research on Hillary Clinton.
It suggests on its face a willingness to collude with Russia, a foreign adversary of the U.S.
This interview is like his, I think, fifth attempt to defend the indefensible. Don Jr. is the latest person in the president's orbit to mislead you, the American people, about their contacts with Russia.
Meeting with a Russian lawyer is not treason. Listening to someone dig dirt on another opponent is not treason.
If there's nothing there, and that's what they tell us, if all of that, why all these lies? Why is it lie after lie after lie?
In any normal political circumstances, we would be at the end already. This would be the end of the road with the clear admission of guilt. The worst case scenario, yeah, we did it.
Trump derangement syndrome out in force today all day long. Donald Trump Jr. broke no laws, likely broke no ethics, election ethics rules.
Don Jr. defending the 2016 meeting, which he says went nowhere, with Sean Hannity.
In retrospect, I probably would have done things a little differently. Again, this is before the Russia mania. This is before they were building it up in the press. For me, this was opposition research.
Are the emails about this meeting as damaging as the press is saying? Why did Don Jr. hold them back until the Times was about to publish them? Are liberal commentators going too far in saying he may have broken the law? And does this change the media narrative about the Russia investigation? Britt Hume and former Bush White House spokesman Ari Fleischer join our discussion. Joe Scarborough says he's leaving the Republican Party and announces it with that other Trump critic, Stephen Colbert. Is this the latest form of anti-Trump protest? Plus, did an MSNBC contributor really rip Ivanka for what she wore to the G20? I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz. It was the emails that boosted this story into the stratosphere. The intermediary, this British tabloid hack-turned-PR guy, Rob Goldstone, said the Russian lawyer would provide Donald Trump Jr. with documents, quote, that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia, and that this high-level sensitive information was, again, quoting, part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump. Don Jr.'s response, I love it. The Moscow lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya offered a different account in an interview with NBC.
I can tell you right now, I have never referred to any compromising information about Miss Clinton.
How did they get that impression?
It might be their desire to see that in my story.
The president's son accused the media of desperation and more.
They're trying to drag out the story, in all fairness. Yeah. They have it. They want to drip a little bit today, drip a little bit then. So I was like, here it is. I'm more than happy to be transparent about it, and I'm more than happy to cooperate with everyone.
So as far as you know, as far as this incident is concerned, this is all of it?
This is everything. This is everything.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Jillian Turner, a former White House official in the past two administrations. Katie Pavlich, editor of townhall.com. And Joe Trippi, the Democratic strategist, all are Fox News contributor. Jillian, Donald Jr. essentially confirmed the basic details of the meeting with the Russian lawyer. Some things are still in dispute. So is it fair to say that this is another case of fake news?
Well, he basically confirmed the details of the meeting in 4 separate disclosures. So there is something to be said for the drip, drip, drip nature of this, not on the part of the media, on the part of him. My bigger concern with this issue is, to me, these meetings are a matter for concern. They constitute, in a worst case scenario, a national security issue. But the media has so far so grossly over-exaggerated many of the scandals when it comes to this administration that the average person is going to look at this and think, oh, this is another Trump administration scandal. The media is losing their minds.
If everything's in 11, then nothing's in 11,
exactly.
As I often say. Katie, let's take a look at what the president had to say when this came up at a news conference in Paris.
I do think this. I think from a practical standpoint, most people would have taken that meeting. It's called opposition research. Honestly, I think the press made a very big deal over something that really a lot of people would do.
The press making a very big deal about it. Is the press making too big a deal about it?
I think the emails are a big deal, and it's because of what exactly the emails say, talking about this coming from a high-level government source from Russia, saying it was to help his father's presidential campaign. I mean, that is the first issue. The second issue is the changing story coming from Donald Trump Jr.
Who talks about the drip, drip, drip.
Well, right, and it's coming from him. Sean Hannity asked him specifically, is there anything else? And he said, no, this is it.
Everything.
And yet here we are, days later. We know that it wasn't just 1 or 2 people in this meeting. The meeting wasn't about adoption. There were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, highest level of the Trump campaign in this meeting. We still don't know what they talked about. And in terms of the president, the question has been all week, what did the president know? Was he told about this meeting? The Trump camp denies that the president knew this, but the president himself somewhat implied that maybe I was told about this meeting. So certainly is unclear.
We'll come back to that. But Joe, it seems that the media, rather than just reporting this as a embarrassing, possibly politically damaging episode, quickly shifted to, is it illegal, and kind of gleefully quoting some Democrats who were saying, oh, it may be treason. So I wonder whether, this is a real story that, again, is going through the media hype machine.
Well, it's a real story, but 2, it's going to go through the media hype machine, partly because the opposition Democrats are going to take advantage of it. But the other thing, I agree with Jillian, look, when everything's an 11, when the 29-second handshake is getting repeatedly run on the cable.
You're referring here to the president and the first lady of France.
Yeah. The 29-second handshake.
That was horrifying, wasn't it?
Yes. It is like, when that's like a big deal, it detracts from when this really is a big deal, partially because Donald Trump Jr. It wasn't everything, and it keeps dripping out. That's a problem.
Just to clarify, so you had the initial statement on Don Jr.'s part. I am told that he wanted to actually put out a more detailed statement, that this is what White House officials came up with, saying that the meeting was primarily about, this Russian lobby adoption-related issue. Then came the second statement, which said, we were told, as they were told, that there was Oppo research on Hillary Clinton. And then he posted the emails on Twitter after being told the New York Times was about to publish them. And then day after day after day. And then we get this on Friday. Take a look.
NBC has learned there was someone else in that controversial meeting. Also in that June 9th meeting at Trump Tower was another person with alleged ties to Moscow, a Russian-American lobbyist, a former Soviet counterintelligence officer, suspected by some U.S. officials of having ongoing ties to Russian intelligence.
Oh, a former Soviet counterintelligence officer. Doesn't this sort of thing, as it dribbles out, fuel media suspicion that we're not getting the whole story?
Of course it does. I would say that these kinds of details are real, like who exactly was in the meeting, was it 6, 7, 8 people, are really important to an investigation. And those standards will be upheld in a court of law in the ongoing case, in the investigation. But when it comes to the court of public opinion of the American people as reflected by the media, they're actually holding the administration, rightly so, to a much higher standard. They want to know that generally their president, their commander-in-chief, is acting with integrity at all times, is acting with transparency, and is putting the national interest at the forefront of everything he's doing. And it's this kind of story that really calls that into question. And I think that's what the media is grappling with as a whole right now.
All right, so Time Magazine put up the cover, has got Donald Trump Jr. on the cover, red-handed. Tell you something about the media mindset here, Katie Pavlich. And is there a sense, I mean, look, the position of the president and the Trump campaign is Oppo meetings go on all the time. Right. Yeah, it was with Russians, but nothing happened. But is there a sense among many of the pundits that, this time we got them? They've been saying no collusion, no collusion, no collusion, right. And there was this at least attempted collusion.
Well, and then this is why the administration and the Trump campaign would argue they aren't going to come out and continue to talk about this story, because even in the case of Don Jr. releasing the emails, they're coming and saying, well, you got caught, you were lying. But there's some credibility to that in the sense that the story has changed multiple times. But in terms of the credibility factor here, The administration doesn't have a lot of credibility on the story because of the changing narrative. And the media, quite frankly, doesn't have very much credibility because we've heard this storyline before. Alleged ties to the Kremlin, alleged ties to counterintelligence operations in Russia, and those stories have been wrong. And so, as Jillian was saying,
wrong or exaggerated, or it's hard to see what's at the core here.
Someone watching goes, okay, the administration can't get their story straight. The media certainly can't either. Who are we supposed to believe on this? We'd like to focus on other things like Obamacare.
But the other thing is just the continuity of their response throughout this. When, Flynn, the coverage of Flynn, and that wasn't true. There were no meetings, and it turned out he lied to the vice president. He's gone. Then you look at Sessions recusing himself. So this is the first time where it wasn't the fake news media saying something. It was emails provided by Donald Trump Jr. And so I think having that fact, a lot of the media, a lot of journalists jumped on that because it was something that the White House couldn't push back against.
There have been a number of conservative commentators and news organizations that have said, well, yeah, this looks pretty bad, or we can no longer give the president and his people the benefit of the doubt. And some of these were never Trumpers from the campaign. At the same time, when you have pro-Trump commentators saying, well, the bottom line is lawyers say it's not illegal, it seems to me that's not that great a defense. It is probably not illegal. I don't think there's any great liability here, but that doesn't mean it doesn't look bad.
Well, and that's the point I was trying to make less eloquently than you previously, which is that in the court of public opinion, people want to not just know that the President of the United States and his team is following the letter of the law, but that they're actually acting, again, in the national interest with integrity in all their interactions, especially in their interactions with foreign adversaries. And so this is exactly the kind of story that fuels mistrust and skepticism and doubt about the president. That's what makes it so dangerous.
Katie, you mentioned questions. I think the whole coverage of next week is going to be what did the president know? Right. And with Yahoo's Mike Isikoff reporting that Trump lawyers were told more than 3 weeks ago about these emails and the meeting, which also included Jared Kushner, as we'll talk about, and Paul Manafort. That may shift. But it also strikes me that now we have all these colorful characters, the British PR guy, and he represented the pop star whose father was politically involved, and the PR guy, Rob Goldstein, he's kind of like the Cato Kalin of this soap opera. Does that make it a more interesting story for people whose eyes may have been glazing over about all this?
Well, it certainly makes it more interesting, that's for sure. But in terms of the Trump campaign, in retrospect, looking back, they probably wish that they didn't let so many people like this close to the top tier of the campaign. Looking at the meeting itself, if it was really a low-level meeting, it wouldn't have been Paul Manafort, Jared Kushner, and Donald Trump Jr. at the meeting. It would have been a low-level staffer or an intern going, and yet here we have the meeting with this cast of characters.
All right, let me get a break here. We'll have more on this after the break. Ahead, Ari Fleischer on how this White House deals with the press. But when we come back, why are some of the media now making this Russian meeting story about Jared Kushner?